So it looks like it's going to be a relatively short video tonight about RPGADAY. It is August 2nd, 2017, and rather than rambling on and on and on like I have a tendency to do, I am going to mention the RPG that I wish existed, which is basically what the question is: what RPG do you wish was published? Not counting my own products that are stuck up here or stuck in the boundaries of the computer files that are still holding them. What I really wish had been, would be published, is a Mass Effect role-playing game, an official Mass Effect role-playing game with official support for, at least a year or so. It is one of my favorite science fiction games. The first one primarily, although the others are pretty decent for the most part. I definitely prefer the first one, and I'm one of those weird people who love the makeup. But for some reason, BioWare and BioWare's later purchases, EA, do not think that people want a Mass Effect RPG. Never mind the fact that there have been tons and tons of fan-made Mass Effect RPG. Never mind the fact that they took their lesser, crappier license of Dragon Age. And when I say crappier, I'm not saying that the story is less well written. I'm not saying that the game was bad. What I'm saying is it was glitchier than Mass Effect. There were so many video issues with floating swords and disappearing helmets and reappearing helmets, and just there were so many visual things they messed up on that it was definitely looked like somebody was in a rush and didn't bother to make the game of the same quality as Mass Effect. And I hate to say that. I really do, because I have nothing against Dragon Age as a setting. I have nothing against Dragon Age as the storytelling, at least as far as I got. I got all the way through the first game, and about halfway through the second game, I had borrowed it from a friend on a console rather than on PC, but I played the first one entirely on PC and enjoyed it a great deal. But it is definitely, to me, the less interesting of their settings. And do you want to know why? Because there are thousands of games with elves and dwarves, and I guess you'd call them half-ogres if you were in a different setting, with swords and magic and dragons and demons and undead. And there aren't enough enemy types in Dragon Age. There really aren't. You fight different forms of undead and people and dragons and occasionally corrupted half-ogre things. And, a few things like elemental plants and the like. But compared to a lot of other fantasy video games, there just was not much variation in enemy types. It was visually bland in that respect. And that's not, again, I'm not damning the game over that little bit of elements, but the world building was weak, especially as a, retcon what specific races look like. In general, it's There's thousands of video games and role-playing games, tabletop ones, that cover the exact same or very similar ground to Dragon Age. How many role-playing games and video games are comparable to Mass Effect? Not a whole lot. There really aren't. And the first one sold like gangbusters. The problem is they changed things from 1 to 2, and I don't know how well it sold. I know the first one sold very well. The second one, I don't know if it sold as well or worse. And then they completely blew the third game's ending for most people. And that basically kind of back ruined the franchise for a lot of people and affected its sales significantly as spoilers came out. But it's still an interesting universe. If they just left the ending more open to play in the universe after they were done, it would have been a good thing. I mean, yes, there is Andromeda. I own Andromeda. I've been playing it, but it suffers from many of the problems of Dragon Age. Not enough varied enemy types. Let me be honest. So far, I've seen, and I've gotten, I would say, about midway through the game, but the enemy types are too similar. There are just so many things that are. Back in the days, way back in the days, when there was a company called, it was the first one, was Black Isle. I think that's who did the original Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate drew from D&D, which has hundreds of different enemies it can put in a scenario, in a situation. Outside, inside, in dungeons, there's just so much that they can put out there. And that takes time, which D&D has had over the years. It also takes care. But in the end, it is weak way to handle your game is to have very limited numbers of enemy types when you expect the game to have a certain length of story. Now, shorter stories, it's okay, but there's replay value for seeing different things. I've played through Mass Effect 1 a half dozen times just to change my answers to questions, just to see what happens if I do A instead of B. I've only played through Mass Effect 2 a couple times. I played through Dragon Age once. I'm going to get the same story no matter what answers I give for the most part. Which is relatively true of Mass Effect as well, but I want a Mass Effect tabletop RPG. I want to go have fun in that universe after the point of, I would say about the point of Mass Effect 2 on. Just ignore everything after that. And just play in that universe. Have the Reapers be a distant threat that may someday show up. But after one of them got killed, and that's not something that happens a whole lot, maybe they have to rethink for a while. I mean, they've got centuries, hundreds of thousands of years to think over, how a handful of races basically banded together and took one of them out. And we know from various things that others were taken out in time too. But it would have been interesting to have left it more open. So Mass Effect, that is really what I would love to have as a tabletop RPG, and we're never going to get it. I know sales of Andromeda have been so disappointing that they pretty much said no more Mass Effect games. And that to me is a huge mistake because they have a licensed property with interesting alien races, with varied alien races. Sure, many of them are humans with funny heads and funny limbs, but we understand them, we understand their motivations, and that makes them playable and interesting. So anyway, I'm stopping here before I start ranting about that mess again. But yeah, Mass Effect. Definitely the one thing I wish we had a role-playing game.